Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. Trusting your instincts and pushing forward in spite of people telling you that it can't be done often leads to incredible outcomes. Our gut instincts often guide us beyond the boundaries of what seems feasible on paper. Some of the most remarkable achievements have emerged when individuals chose to ignore the doubt and past statistics and push ahead with determination and resilience. Success often arises from a refusal to accept limitations and an unwavering belief in the possibility of achieving the seemingly impossible. Today's guest lives by this mantra. Jessica Williamson is an entrepreneur, business and mindset mentor, podcaster, author, and TEDx speaker. Jess, so great to meet you, and thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And I honestly, love the work you do. So it's an honor to be here and chat with you.
Well, same to you. I mean, I was looking up, some of the work that you're doing, and I think there's a lot of overlaps, and super excited to just explore your personal mindset, the work you're doing, the sort of messages that you're putting out there, and the concepts you're talking about, because I think they're all so relevant in this day and age. So super excited.
Awesome. I'm excited to dive right in.
Yeah, well, I might jump in just straight away by asking you, just so our listeners can get to know you a bit better, would you be able to give a background on yourself and just how you came to be doing what you're now doing?
Yeah, I always say, all right, I'll try and keep this short because otherwise we'll be here for like 10 hours. But I basically, I basically started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 21. I had this grand idea. I was going to start a global fashion brand. And at the time had zero experience in the fashion industry, zero experience running a business, really no clue or no reason why that would have been a thought that should have crossed my mind. Like, let me go and start a global fashion brand in the most competitive industry. But to top it off, I decided swimwear was the choice as well, which swimwear, it's like you buy one a year, it's seasonal, and body positive, all of the things play a part. People want to try it on. And I probably chose the hardest thing ever, but at the time, not one of those things crossed my mind. I just went headfirst in, and pretty much because of that, I set up the business, positioned it in a way that was seen global and sold globally from day one. And 1 week into business, I was invited to New York Fashion Week, which I know you're in New York,
Wow.
which is kind of crazy being from Perth with zero clue what I was doing, 22 years old at that point, 1 week into business, invited to New York Fashion Week, which is just like, how even does that happen? So it was kind of throw in the deep end from day one. And I just kept one step in front of the other, grew and scaled that business. I since exited that business in 2021, but between 2016 and 2019, I decided to start 5 other businesses. So I had an influencer travel agency. So I used to take influencers on international trips and we would promote brands, kind of like an agency model. And then I decided I was going to open a brick and mortar events photo shoot venue here in Perth. I was doing like photography on the side. I was doing my mentoring. So all of it at once in 2019, which obviously landed me in burnout big time. And then I decided, okay, I know how to create a successful business. That's not the problem because they were booked out, sold out, it was thriving, but I was not thriving. Like my health was suffering. I was anxious from the moment I woke up, and I realized that, okay, I'm chasing society's idea of success. And in that moment, I had to redefine what does success actually mean to me. And to me, that was like actually feeling calm every day. That was the number one thing and something that I still really value. So that's kind of where I started to exit and sell some of the companies. Now I just, and I say just, but I mean, now I run through my personal brand. So doing my mentoring, my podcast, writing my book, all of the above. So I haven't really slowed down, but I've learned how to manage and make sure I have a bit more focus on me in that process.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Yeah, it's so funny. Your version of slowing down is just, doing a podcast and coaching and a book and a few other things.
Yeah.
But um, super impressive there. And I was, yeah, I mean, that's unbelievable. Sort of launching that at such a young age and having that success and doing all of those other businesses. And I was sort of smiling when you were saying that because there's a sort of can see another crossover there where at the age of, I think I was 23 and my first business was an underwear label of all things. And
Yeah.
I was doing modeling work and I was on a TV show at the time and I had no idea about the industry or how to start a business, but just went and sort of went in the deep end and learnt as I went. And it was probably the best business experience I could have had, even though it was so
Yeah.
chaotic. Um, and I think that's so interesting. I guess as one thing, one question to ask with that mindset of sort of not having the answers, not having the training or knowledge, but just going, head first, and that
Mm.
naivety of not knowing how difficult this can be, not knowing the statistics of how hard it would be to
Hmm.
succeed. Was that a positive for you because it prevented you from,
Yeah.
yeah, slowing down?
Yeah, I actually coined, well, I didn't invent the term, but I call it like playing in fantasy land. It's like everyone tells you to be realistic, and I actually think that is the biggest superpower. And you have a similar thought process, but I didn't realize not everyone thinks that way. Not everyone has this blind faith of the only option is for it to work out. Like there was not 1 ounce of self doubt. Part of that is potentially being young and naive, but I've kind of always had that sense of just let's go big and let's not put any limits on what's possible. And then it happens. And I truly believe, and there's a lot of obviously discussions around what we think and what we believe create our outcomes. But I still think people are skeptical about it being real
Mm.
because they're still holding on to those fears or the what ifs, or I don't want to go too big because then I'll look silly, or then I might lose all my money, which I definitely did at one point, emptied my life savings. But I came back from that because then I said, okay, the fact is, I've emptied my life savings. Well, what's the next step out of it? I didn't create any narratives around when I try and start a business, I empty my life savings. And, I'm not cut out to make a business. I didn't create any beliefs or narratives around what that meant. So I actually think having or playing in Fantasyland is like the biggest success tool because you're not wasting energy on what might happen. It's just putting all your energy into taking the action and moving forward, which I know is easier said than done for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Easier said than done, but such an important thing. And I guess that's where so many mental health issues arise from in general as well, worrying about the what ifs and
Mm,
projecting to the future and looking at all of the negatives. And like you're saying there, it's not to say that it's not an easy thing to ignore that, but it is such an important thing. And, we can get so caught up in, even the people that care about us are often out of care for us, out of love, uh, going against what we're actually wanting to do and feeding us information that drives fear, that drives that insecurity about the chance of success, about all the future problems that could happen, and that leads to it. So it's being able to be strong enough in yourself that you can just trust your gut and know that things are going to be okay regardless of what happens. And yeah, and I guess like you're saying there, even when the worst case happens, I mean, and I think most entrepreneurs have had that, where you've had some success, you've gone broke, you've built it again. When that happens, it's almost the best thing that could happen because
mm,
it's liberating. It's one of the worst case scenarios. You get through it and you realize, well, that didn't really change anything. If anything, I
yeah.
learned a lesson and I'm still the same person. I'm still able to do all the things I, need to do every day. It doesn't, at the end of the day, it's the process that we should be enjoying doing. And I think if you can be more attached to that, you're going to find a solution at some point.
Yeah, 100%. And I love what you said about that being the best case, like the worst case being the best case scenario, because what it shows us then is I mean, our brains are wired to keep us alive, basically, if we simplify it. And so by going through those worst case scenarios that oftentimes we're so afraid to take action towards in case it happens is really just because we see it as a threat to our health or well-being. And so when it happens, it shows us that we're actually safe. We survived. We can handle that. And something that I talk about a bit as well is you don't even necessarily have to empty your life savings like I did or hit that rock bottom moment, but even just visualizing that happening and kind of regulating your nervous system as if you experienced it creates that safety in your mind that actually, if that did happen, I can handle it. And it kind of normalizes that feeling a little bit so that you feel safer to take the leaps forward.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at @NickBracks. I really appreciate your ongoing support. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And reminding yourself that those scenarios can also happen, regardless of whether you try and take the plunge and, create your business or if there's some other endeavor you're wanting to follow, it is just as likely to happen maybe in the job that you're doing that you're not happy with and that you're doing in place of the thing you want to do, that nothing's 100% secure. So I think just reminding yourself that we're in control and we can find our way out. Another thing, when you were talking about that, I wanted to ask you. You were talking about just going and doing it, and you created this fashion label at a young age, and you believed you could do it, and you had all of these crazy things happen. How important is it when you're sort of jumping into these things that it's backed up with the actual work ethic and because I think we can get caught up in the other side of it where we believe in ourselves and we have all of these dreams and we think we can do everything, but we don't actually back that up with the work or with knowing what to do. I think because then you can just be stuck in, stuck at a standstill, not knowing what steps to take.
Yeah. So, I mean, I go 0 to 100. I tell people my problem is like trying not to go 0 to 1,000 because then I burn out. But like 100%, like it's pretty much 50-50. You've got to believe in yourself wholeheartedly, be prepared to take the risks. But if you're prepared, that's like not going to move you forward at all if you're not taking the action. So, the reason why I was invited to New York Fashion Week wasn't just I believed magically I'm going to be international. It's because I had that belief. And then the actions that I took as a result, I worked with international influencers to build a global audience. I invested in a high-end photo shoot. I actually flew across the country to Melbourne to get the vision that I had because I couldn't find photographers in Perth that matched that exact vision. So I took all of the actions that really aligned and that then positioned me in that way, in that exact example. But even recently, I decided I wanted to get a TED talk and find a publisher for my book. And like I just shared with you before, both of those came through last week, which was just crazy that it just all happened in that time. But it's a result of one, I was like, how on earth do you get a TED talk? So I researched the heck out of it. I learned, I found people who knew how to do it, how to position yourself in a way to pitch to them or, things like that. And then it happened because I sought out the information and then I took the action to write the pitch and send it off to publishers as well. And all of these things happened. So it wasn't that I just thought, let me send it to one publisher and see. I sent it to every publisher that I was like, let me see every single one. And I'm going to send it to every single one that's relevant to my category of book because why not? It's going to increase my chances.
I love that. I love that. I think it's such a great message of, just cutting through all of the noise and looking at it logically and just what do I actually need to do and how can I influence this result? And we often feel like that things are just so out of reach when we don't know the industry, when we don't have the connection. It can seem daunting, and people tell us that it's too difficult and there's too many gatekeepers. But if you just apply that same business logic to basically anything, there's going to be a process, and there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be, a way to open those doors. And like you said, how do you find a book deal? Well, go and put it out there, and not just stop at one publisher, but go to as many as you can, and learn as you go. And often something does come from it if you just stick to it.
Yeah. I always say where there's a will, there's always a way, but it just depends how willing you are to do it. Like it depends, are you going to give up after 2 tries, after 2 days, or are you going to keep persevering until you make it happen? Or are you going to find the information that you're lacking? But a lot of people aren't willing to make it happen. That's the difference.
Yeah, you've got to be able to commit sort of blindly and not put time frames on it, and not put provisions on how it's going to happen. So it's such an important thing, having that resilience, I think, as an entrepreneur. I've got sort of a bigger question I want to ask you around, what one of the key topics you talk about with how fear of actual success as an entrepreneur. So before I jump into that one, how can, as an entrepreneur, how can we manage our focus? Because you've achieved so many different things, often, or even now, I guess, doing multiple things at once. How do you actually maintain that focus and not get overwhelmed, and make sure that you're accountable and doing the right things for the projects that you're pursuing? Because that can be so difficult, and it can be so hard to just, not be distracted and not go down rabbit holes and manage our time.
Yeah. I use a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of to-do lists, but something that I realized is I can achieve more things if I have more brain space, basically, or mental capacity for it. So one tool that I actually love to use is just a very, very simple to-do list app, but it's called Todoist. And it allows me to schedule tasks or projects for certain days. And once it's scheduled, I don't have to look at it. I can just open today's to-do list. And oftentimes when we're trying to juggle so many things, it's because we're holding them in our mental capacity. And I used to use a paper planner, which then you'd have to write out every single day, like, oh, what do I need to do today? And it would be very hard to prioritize. Whereas I open the app, it's out of my brain. If my brain says, oh, don't forget about this, I'll say, no worries, it's scheduled. I have no idea where it's scheduled, but it is. And then I move on, and it's a passing thought versus all of these things consuming space in my brain. So that way I can look at my list and see 4 things today. That is all I need to think about. And once those 4 things are done, I go and relax. Because if I opened it right now, there would be 97 things. Like at any given time, there's between 70 to 90 things on the list. And if I was using like how people just write one to-do list, it's never ending. And then that's where I see guilt come in when you're trying to relax. It's like, oh, but I've got 97 still to go. Like I can't relax because I've got stuff on my to-do list. And so that really helps just for me to get actual brain space back. And then I know things are prioritized and organized when they need to be based on urgency or deadlines. So I just move everything that's not urgent and don't worry about it.
I love that. And it's such an important thing, because otherwise you're just flying blind. And I've been like that in the past, where sort of was trying to do a million things at once and there was no structure, and it becomes chaos, and it just doesn't, you can't sustain it. So I think the planning like that is the best thing you can do. And especially if you do have that mindset where you've got ideas coming up all of the time and you're ambitious and you're wanting to do things, you have to put that somewhere and plan it, so that then you can have the permission to relax and focus. I think, it's a critical thing. So important.
Because the ideas never end. So.
Never end. No. Exactly. And you'll drive yourself crazy. So I think it's so important. So you talk a lot about fear of success, which I think is so interesting. Fear of failure is a huge thing that gets talked about, but fear of actual success, I think that's a super interesting topic. And I know I've dealt with that quite a lot, and probably still to this day. Anything that I'm doing, any big, I've got all these big dream projects I'm working on. And even when you start seeing, um, the positive things happen with it, there's a weird feeling often of uh, this doubt and this fear of, oh, but something's surely going to go wrong at some point, and self-sabotage. So
Yes.
why does that happen, and what can we do to try and mitigate that?
Yeah, so I speak a lot to ambitious people in general. And so what I see with ambitious people is fear of failure isn't even on the cards. It's like where you're at now is almost your version of failure. Like, what's the worst that can happen if you try and it doesn't work? You end up back where you were, So when we think about it in that sense, it's like failure's fine. Like you can handle it, you're resilient enough. But when it comes to success, the challenge with success is we have more money, then we have more not relationships, we have more responsibility with money. When we are, if we have more clients, if we have more customers, there's more responsibility with that. When it comes to success, there's even the societal expectations that you don't have problems anymore. You're a millionaire, you're a billionaire, you can't have
Mm,
problems today, and this plays a massive part in mental health as well, because if a millionaire is complaining, we've seen it in movies, we've seen it in society in general, it's like, you can't complain. You don't know what hard is. We get told these narratives. And so it almost removes a human element when you become too successful. And that measurement is based on obviously who you surround yourself with, who your general close proximity is, or even just the society that you're kind of part. Because obviously if you're around billionaires and you're like just starting out or coming from middle class, then maybe that becomes your new safety blanket. But
mm,
oftentimes it's the ambitious people who are breaking free from where they came from or building something so much bigger than they've even witnessed themselves, that there's all of these pressures that come with it, the expectations, the even the judgments as well around, bragging, or now all you care about is money, or all of these narratives that we've been taught in society, and they're playing out subconsciously. So that's where we start to see, if you're working towards something and you keep hitting the same roadblocks, you're like, I'm doing all the things. Like, why can't I get past this? Or you keep hitting the same income level over and over, even though you've shifted your strategy to be able to allow more flow. So even for me, I experienced that where no matter what I did, I kept hitting the exact same revenue. Like, you could
mm.
not make this up because my business model was scalable. It wasn't a result of being capped in any way. And it just kept hitting the same revenue, even though I was doing all of the things to kind of break to next level. And what I realized was I had a massive growth in income and success and helping more people and all of the incredible things. And my mind said, what if you can't keep it up?
Mm.
Then then you're going to look silly, or then you're going to let people down, or whatever it was that came with that huge next level. And I felt unsafe in holding
Yeah,
that. And what happened was then the next few months, it went back down to where I was comfortable. And so
yeah.
I had to rewrite my mind and create a level of safety in holding that next level of success.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast and want to learn more, I've released my first book, Move Your Mind: How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life, where I talk about my own journey with mental health and share tips from experts on how to maintain a healthy mindset. You can buy the book on Amazon or through my website at nickbracks.com/book. That makes so much sense and can happen on so many levels. And I
Mm,
guess you could even do it with, you're trying to get a book deal. And what if I get this book deal and I am so consumed by it that I can't keep up with my other business
yes.
responsibilities, and people can
Burnout is
reinforce that. Yeah.
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 Burnout and even mental health. Burnout and mental health are a big one because people associate more success with more work, with less health with less fun, with more sacrifice. And so, if we believe that when we create more success, our mental health is going to suffer, our physical health is going to suffer, or it means that we have to spend less time with family and friends because that's what success is being painted to look like, then there's no way our mind is going to let us sacrifice all these things that are keeping us alive or that we value, such as fun and family. It's going to say, hey, this business sounds like a threat. Let's eliminate it. Let's just make sure you're capped at that. And that's where it plays out subconsciously.
Yeah, absolutely. So, would you say in business it's really important at the beginning and as you move forward to make sure that it is scalable, that you've got systems in place, that you're not just relying on yourself and turning yourself into the only resource in the business, because that, I guess, that is where those problems probably can happen. If you just have no other option other than yourself for everything, that can only sustain for so long.
Yeah, 100% scalable, building the right teams. Even for me, I've actually always had a super lean team because I just love being agile and keeping things really flexible. But it's, yeah, automating the things or creating that level of, it's not even necessarily systems and teams and things are definitely going to help. Of course, you need that. But for me, I found that it was more boundaries. Like I had to set
Mm.
myself boundaries because as entrepreneurs, we can fill the time. We can pretty easily fill the time. Do we need to? Probably not. We could get the same result with maybe less time or maybe doing less things and get rid of all the unnecessary pieces. And so for me, it was really being really hard about those boundaries and noticing when I started to get into more of a negative or anxiousness started showing up for me. I like to check in and say, what do I need today? And sometimes it's just clear the schedule, go to the beach. That's it.
Mm.
Or sometimes I need sleep. And so I like to just check in when something feels a little off and just say, what do I need today? Because I know that sacrificing one day of work is going to be well worth it in the long term sustainability of the business if I'm making sure that I'm sorted first as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. It's so refreshing to hear you talk about that, because I think it's honest and real and practical advice when you can hear a lot of motivational speakers out there saying you've just got to, grind, work harder, get up at 3 in the morning, learn to sleep for 4 hours a night, and, do all these things that if I tried to do that for 1 week, I'd be a mess. I'd probably have
Yeah.
a mental breakdown. Uh, and the older I've gotten, exactly what you're talking about there, having boundaries, and it's about working hard, but in a smart way, where it's not like on a given day it feels that difficult. Because, like you're saying there, if you're planning things out and you're structuring your day and you're having those boundaries, you should feel quite calm, clear, and focused every day and have that balance. So it's about creating that ecosystem for yourself where you can more sustain that and be consistent. I think that's the key thing. How can you make
Yeah.
yourself consistent over a long period of time? Because that's normally where the results come from. Whereas we often think at the beginning that it's just about pushing harder, but you could be pushing in the wrong way. And even
Mm,
if you are pushing in the right way, how, no human can sustain that, no matter what they say.
no.
We've all got limitations, and we all need to, have balance in our lives.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's like nuance to it because I think for a while I was talking a lot about freedom and balance and live your life first. And what people took that as was Jess doesn't work. She just magically creates success. And I was like, no, no, no. The days that I'm on, but I make sure that I have the boundaries in place that, you know, it works as well. And it's knowing when you're being efficient and when things sometimes just don't work. And so I just let go. There's no point forcing something that maybe should take an hour, take 4 hours instead. I'll use that time productively to fill my cup and I'll come back when I'm feeling fresh and can do it efficiently as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I've definitely had those moments where I've been, exhausted and overwhelmed. It's late at night, and I'm sitting there trying to force myself to, put proposals together or whatever it is, and yeah, it'll take 4 times as long, and there'll be mistakes everywhere, and you'll be in such a bad mood by the end of it. It's like, why? Just stop, go
Yeah.
and enjoy yourself, relax, and come back in the morning. It's really not going to change that much if you leave it for a little bit longer. And then when you come back to it, you realize, what was I doing? This is
Yeah.
fine. And you just get it done. And it's so important to be focused and be calm and clear, because that will save you time and you'll be more efficient.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you so much for sharing all of this. Before we finish with 5 closing questions, before we go into that, I just wanted to ask you, this is a mental health and well-being sort of themed podcast. What are some of the core things you do on a daily basis to maintain your personal mental health and well-being and just stay sane in the process of everything you're doing?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to get cancelled for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I always say my form of meditation is reality TV. Like, I just love reality TV. Give me some Kardashians, Real Housewives, some other people that would be so anxiety inducing, but I'm like, I love it. And so I'll always get some fix in of that. But the other thing that I do is just I keep it quite simple, actually. Like, I don't have a whole 5 a.m. routine or anything. I just make sure I eat really well and get a ton of sleep. Like, I probably get 8+ hours of sleep a night. And that's always been my number one. Even when I was in university and everyone was pulling all-nighters, I was in bed by 8, 9 p.m. every single time. So that's always my number one. Mix it in with some reality TV, and that's my perfect combo.
Well, thank you for sharing. And again, refreshing, because it's really, sleep is critical, and being able to, just make sure that we're focusing on looking after ourselves in that area. Reality TV, I think, is great, because, anything where you can just turn your brain off and just,
Yes.
relax and veg out. So I think, no, love that. And again, love everything you've shared here. And thank you for being so open and honest and giving something. I think our listeners will take so much out of this. So the first of these 5 questions is, what is your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Oh, so I would say, honestly, I just loved going to the beach as a kid, which is probably why I ended up starting my swimwear brand.
Yeah. Makes sense, yeah. And being an Australian in Perth, I guess, it's such a amazing lifestyle to have that access. So I
Yeah.
love that. What do you think's currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
Yeah, I think it's just never ending connectedness. Like, we don't really get a break, and all of the apps are designed to keep us on there. So I think it's just always being on, and not really having space for our brains to just be. Like, how often do
Yeah.
you just be? You always got a podcast in your ears, or multitasking, or, replying to that message, or scrolling or something. So yeah, I try and have some just brain dead time.
Oh, it's overwhelming. And again, I guess it goes back to boundaries, what you said before. If we don't have boundaries with that, it's too much. I think
Mm,
it's social media, or this, it's what most of the guests say are, one of the biggest issues. It is something that is only getting more crazy, and we need to have our own boundaries with it.
yeah.
What's your personal definition of happiness?
Oh, my personal definition of happiness probably goes back to what I said earlier, and just feeling calm. Like, the first time I realized that I wasn't calm, I went to Margaret River. I don't know if you know the region, but it's a beautiful wine region with wineries and beautiful
Mm,
beaches. And there was no phone service. And when I was in my peak burnout, I was like, why does my heart feel slow? Like, something must be wrong. And it was just that I was calm for the first time in a long time. And so that really jolted me out of that high anxiousness mode. And yeah, I just make sure that I'm calm, and that gives me peace.
yeah, yeah, it's such an important thing. And I think doing things like that is so important, because we realize that we don't actually need that much to be happy. We all have access to nature, and yes, we need our core needs met, and certain things, certain amount of resource to just do what we need, or do what we need, but it's not as much as we think. And
Mm.
being able to have that as our baseline gives you the freedom then to take risks and explore everything else. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
What are you most afraid of?
I think I'm most afraid of not living up to the potential that I know I can be. And I think that goalpost continually shifts because I reach it. And then, although, it's like this balance of I'm super grateful, it's not like, oh, I'm never happy with where I'm at, but it's knowing that I'm here for so much more. And so, yeah, that's kind of what drives me, but also potentially a fear.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think I have that same fear. Uh, so on a positive note, what are you most proud of?
I am most proud of who I've become because would you believe, like 8 years ago, when I started my first business, I did not want anyone to know I existed. I didn't want my name anywhere. I could not public speak to save my life. I couldn't even remember my name. I was the biggest, shyest introvert. And so it's just been really cool to just evolve.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. Well, the transition from that to what you're doing now, starting all of these different businesses, doing a TED talk and a book soon, having your podcast, everything you're doing, I think it's incredible. And I think, yeah, I've taken a lot out of this. I know our guests will, and I think it's so important, the messages that you're sharing, and I think it's going to help so many people. So thank you for coming on here. And final thing, where can our listeners go if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, so they can come and hang out on my podcast, Jess Williamson, the podcast. I share a lot for female entrepreneurs on there, and also Instagram at jess.williamson8, because apparently it's the most common name in history. So we've got 8 at the end. But Instagram is like the place where I hang out most, and my DMs are always open. I always love to hear, what people have taken away from the episode as well.
Great. Well, we'll have those links in the show notes, so make sure to check them out. And Jess, so great to meet you. And yeah, thank you again for making the time.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Nick.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks to Jessica Williamson for joining me today for Move Your Mind. Also, a huge thank you to those of you listening. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more or connect with me personally, visit www.nickbracks.com or send me a DM on Instagram at nickbracks. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.